I am at the Red House with my friend Joseph Olson of Kuya Bear Food.
Yep.
Thank you for coming over.
Yeah, for sure.
And thank you for bringing this.
Yeah, I thought it would be appropriate, and it'd be wrong if I didn't. So
what are we working with?
yeah, so I guess getting right into it, you've had lumpia before. That's like the main staple of what I do and what most people have had traditionally. So that's just like a savory egg roll, and it has. So mine, lots of people do different things, but mine has ground beef, ground chicken, and then like Asian seasonings and sauces mixed in with some eggs, and then fried in a lumpia wrapper. Mm-hmm. And then to the left, or to the next one, which I'm not sure if you've had. I
don't think so.
It's I just call it the ube roll or ube bay roll. I'm not sure yet exactly what we're going to call it, but we've been serving it for a while. And it's ube halaya, which is, ube first off is like a Filipino sweet potato or like yam. That's the other word. Yeah, yam.
Okay.
And it's purple if you look at it.
Those are from purple sweet potatoes?
Yeah, purple yam type things.
Gotcha.
But they're traditional Filipino thing, food item, whatever. And I cook it in coconut milk and sugar, so it's more of a dessert roll. And then I put a glaze on top of it. And I like that one the most out of all the three I brought. And then the newest one we have in the middle, which you can have all those because I don't like fish, but it's a crab rangoon roll. So essentially it's just like a regular crab rangoon, but in lumpia form or egg roll form. So
nice.
Yeah, and those have been a hit recently. They replaced our mac and cheese roll, which we had before.
Yeah.
So
I've seen the mac and cheese roll, but never did actually get to try it yet.
People, I mean, honestly, I just got tired of making it, and I was like, that's the goal eventually, is to have like an array of different like traditional and non-traditional rolls, and then, but yeah, like I took a break from that and made the crab rangoon roll. So, do
you mind if I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. And actually, this is a good opportunity to share. What was I gonna say? Next weekend we'll be at Fancy Groceries like winter market, and I'll be introducing a new roll there, which will be. And I tried bringing it today, but I'm still working on the recipe. But pumpkin spice, or I'm calling it the PSL roll, but pumpkin spice lumpia. So it's like pumpkin spice cheesecake, like wrapped and fried in a lumpia wrapper. So
Tis the season.
Yeah. So,
man, that's so good.
You like it?
Yeah,
cool.
That's so good.
Awesome.
I've everything I've had of yours so far I've liked, but I really like the flavor of that.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought these.
It's like more of a mukbang than a interview.
Yeah, this is like my version of Hot Ones or something.
Yeah.
You know? This is like. So I didn't really do a great job of introducing you, but.
Oh yeah, you're fine.
You're a chef in town. Do like a street vendor, I guess you'd say, or street chef. How would you describe it?
I just make food and sell it for money. I always feel weird when people call me chef because, like, I never ever thought food would be something I'd do, like, for money. I've always loved cooking and grew up around like food, but it was never on my radar in terms of like the stuff I would do. Like, I don't do this for a living or as a career, but
right.
Something that I do to make money for, So I always get weird when people call me chef. But yeah, that's what I do with Kuya Bear, is sell and make and share Filipino cuisine.
Yeah,
so,
I see.
Yeah.
So is the money aspect, is that mainly just to cover sort of the cost that it's costing you to do it?
So actually, I guess the genesis of Kuya Bear was like out of necessity for money because something happened. Oh yeah, I used to have this van. So me and my wife, we had 2 cars, and then I crashed the van, avoiding rear-ending someone. So we were down to 1 car, and we were just going crazy being a 1-car household, and so we really needed a car. And I was like, what's a quick way I can make money? And I saw the Club Yeti pop-ups, and my friend did one. I was like, oh, that's an easy way to make money. And I thought of like food that I could sell that I know how to make. And I think like 6 months earlier, my mom had finally taught me how to make this. Because she's always said that she'd tell me when I was older how to make lumpia, which I think is just an excuse for her not to show me, because she just didn't want to have to explain to little me how to do that, which is fair. And so I was like, oh, I'll try selling lumpia, and then and yeah, it just kind of went from there, and we ended up getting gifted a truck. So I didn't really need the money anymore. So, and then this just like took off, popped up more places like Monstercade and all the breweries in town almost, and like grown a pretty good following. Like within 6 months, and without like posting regularly, we were able to grow our Instagram to like 1,000 followers. And so, and had people approach me about investing for like a food truck and stuff like that. And so, and yeah, so honestly, I'm at the point where I'm thinking to myself, like, do I want to make this legit? Do I want to take it like as far as it can go, or do I want to just like do this for fun still, a little extra cash, and still focus on the other like actual career things that I'm like into and doing right now. So.
And that's something you're still kind of in the process of trying to decide where you're at with that?
Yeah. I'm currently in grad school, and I have been for the past like 2-3 years, to be a school counselor. So that's the other thinking of this, was like, oh, I can do this in the summers because I'm in education, and obviously I'm not getting paid or working in the summer, unfortunately. So this would be a cool way to spend my time and make money. But I mean, honestly, like the community and like social aspect of this is like, I enjoy that more than the money part. Obviously, I make good money doing this, but like the people I've gotten to meet and the connections I've had, like it's just so much fun. So being able to grow that, and also just sharing like my background. Like there's only one other Filipino restaurant in town, and not many people know about it. And I don't think those people are, I mean, obviously they're sharing our cuisine and culture, but they're not as bold and forward about it as they could be. I mean, nothing against them. I honestly haven't been there yet, or eaten their food, but as someone, and I also think they're immigrants, so they're not really sure how to do that. So like as someone being, like my mom is an immigrant, and so being raised here in the States, but also the influence of like Filipino culture and stuff, like I want to share that, and I feel like I'm a good like in between for that as well. And honestly, like I haven't really connected with the Filipino community in Winston yet through my food. It's and I actually had my first event with these like Filipino promoters for like some show they're putting on in Clemens, and I actually met the head lady of that group at the opening weekend of the comedian Joe Coy. I don't know if you've seen him before. He has like a few Netflix specials. He's a Filipino comedian. And he just put out a movie like a month or two ago. And it was just like me and my wife in the theater, and then this like Filipino family. And then like I held the door for them when we were leaving. Honestly, I did it so that like maybe she'd say hey or something, and I could like insert like, hey, I sell lumpia. And she actually like recognized me from social media or something. Like, hey, are you Kuya Bear Food? I'm like, oh yeah, I am. And then she's like, I run this promotion thing for Filipino entertainment, and we'd love to have you at some of our events. So I'm doing my first event with them in 2 weeks, I think, in Clemens.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of cultures here. So like for me, what I love is the idea of culture. That I think like when it comes to music, when it comes to like film to a degree, I love trying to experience what cultures are and trying to get some grasp, some sense of the flavor, literally the flavor.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm like seeing what you're doing here, also with the modern, like you've got some modern twists that you've done, but you're bringing like the Filipino culture into Winston in a more obvious way, in a way that a lot of us who have never traveled the world or whatever, or not explored this cuisine as much, have ever gotten to experience. So that's sick. And then like to hear that, that's Filipino culture in particular seems to be one, like a major one, I guess, that is not very represented in the area. Like I'm not, I don't drive around town being like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
where I can experience Filipino culture usually.
Yeah, and like when you think of East Coast, obviously like California and West Coast, that's where all the Filipinos are, especially in like the Bay Area and stuff. Here on the East Coast, it's mainly like Florida or like New Jersey area. That's where, and some in Virginia. Like that's what I've grown to understand because I'm originally from the Midwest. So that's like my understanding of like where most of the Filipino people are located on the East Coast. And so you're not going to find a lot here. So the school I work at, I'm actually surprised. There's like a good amount of Filipino kids, so I've been able to connect with them and send some lumpia home with them to share with their family and get their critiques on it. It's interesting, but yeah, going back to what you said about cultures and music. So I know your podcast is like primarily like musicians and stuff. So I wanted to share some of my music background.
Oh hell yeah!
I'm not performing or playing any bands right now, but growing up in my town, I was very much involved in the DIY, like hardcore punk scene. And so it was actually a lot of the values and skills I learned from that, which helped me launch this. Like I love graphic design, and I used to like make flyers for shows or like make merch, and things like that. Or like going out and reaching out to venues when you couldn't find one for like a touring package when you like book a show. Like, it felt like doing that again when reaching out to like breweries and stuff to pop up, and then also like, if you look on my Instagram and you see the posts I made earlier when I was doing this, they kind of look like show posters. And also my bear logo, it's like very much influenced by like hardcore, straight edge, like hardcore. It's like the iconic like running, like the floor punch running guy. And then if you look on the bear's fist, he has like a straight edge X on, because I'm straight edge, and then yeah, so the pose and the X, but yeah, a lot of like what I learned from like just DIY like helped me really get into this, and it brought me back to that. It's like my way of like getting back into DIY culture in terms of, and it's not, instead of music, it's with food.
Yeah,
so,
man.
Yeah.
Dude, I think we touched on this just barely at the event that we both worked at Muse.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, like not to sound. I don't know exactly what I'm about to say, but I'm just gonna go for it, see what happens. But music in the community right now and for a while, I think, has felt like it was in this state of, at least from friend to friend, neighbor to neighbor, whatever. Like 10 years ago, 7 years ago, it was really exciting to go to a like Reanimator or go to a place like I don't know, was probably Ziggy's at the time, but more so like the Garage, different places where small shows happened and to see shows. Here recently, I would argue that it's been it's almost like music is kind of on pause in some ways. It's kind of like, hey, let's express creativity in other interesting ways, in entrepreneurship, in food, in cultural expressions that aren't necessarily limited to music. And I think that's cool because, like, at least that's been, I don't know if it's like the age that we're at or if it's just like the world that we're in right now, but I think it's really cool to see like the other skills that musicians have and can bring out that's still part of this whole expression of creativity, but it's just a different experience than music.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, like you said, music being on pause, I think part of that, especially me being an educator, and I used to work at Reynolds High School, so like the arts magnet high school of the area, and I was really surprised that then they have like the Follies, which is like a talent show or whatever, but they don't have a battle of the bands. I don't see a lot of kids talking about like being in bands or like even wearing like obscure band shirts. It's all like mainstream stuff, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just kind of disappointing and sad to see that like DIY or punk, hardcore, or whatever genre is like kind of lost within the youth these days. And I mean, a lot of that can be attributed to social media and just like what kids are into and stuff like that. And I'm sure, everything's cyclical, so I'm sure it's going to come back some way or another. But and that was my youth. And so like you said, we're all like growing up, and whether it's advanced, like showing new things in music or other skills. You don't really see that in the youth these days. And so one of the things that I've enjoyed with Kuya Bear is the girl that helps me. I don't know if you've seen her.
Like at your events?
Yeah. She was there at Muse. Mm-hmm. No, was she at Muse?
The girl that was. I went to your event at, what's it called? Public House.
Yes, she helps me pretty much all the time. But yeah, she was there at Muse. Anyway, she's in high school, and so I've kind of been trying to like introduce her into like instilling some of the like the values and skills I learned from like DIY and stuff, because she's the president of the Girls Council at Reynolds, and I was like telling her, you need to do like events and stuff. And she's like, well, how do I do that? I'm just a high school kid. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. You just ask, you know? And so I've helped her like network and like work with places and people, and that's cool. And that's just the thing. Like kids don't realize like just because you're a kid doesn't mean you can't like ask businesses or places if you can like make something happen. And it doesn't really matter. And honestly, I think business owners and stuff would be more willing to say yes to like a kid who has an idea than an adult sometimes.
Oh,
you know? And I guess that's like the biggest thing that makes me sad about like that scene not being around. Is just like, because it did so much for me, you know. It got me excited about like doing food. Obviously I was excited about music, and I do like 500 different things, but I use a lot of those skills and values I learned from that in those areas in my life as well. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So I've got some questions, but first I feel like I need to try one of these.
Oh yeah, the ube ones. Yeah. Honestly, out of the three I brought, they're my favorite one. The lumpia, I just ate so much growing up. I'm just kind of tired of it. So good.
Nice subtle flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Also, I feel like it's so rare to get to eat something so seriously purple.
Oh yeah.
You know, something that isn't full of like food color or whatever. Like that's the real deal purple.
And the funny thing is, like some people, when they make it, they add. Oh no, that's ice cream. Did you get to try the halo halo?
I did.
Okay, cool.
So I laughed because like it was so weird, but a woman I just happened to sit with like let me try hers, and I was like, "Are you for
nice.
real? Like no one does that anymore." Yeah. But she did. She let me try hers.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you went there. The last Fancy Groceries we did. We did a collab with Chippy Kaye. I don't know if you ever had his cookies before.
I don't think so.
He's actually Filipino too. So I like really wanted to do a collab with him on that, but he made a purple cookie and I made homemade ube ice cream, which is what was in the halo halo.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to food coloring, that's where this tangent is going on. But I was like looking up recipes and comparing and stuff, and lots of time people put purple food coloring in, but when I made mine, it stayed pretty purple. And like sometimes when people make halaya, they put purple food coloring, but I didn't put any in this, and like it's like super vibrant.
So purple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some Willy Wonka stuff. I love it. It's really delicious, man. All three of these are friggin' great. This one, I can see why it's a staple. I love the
wow, you crushed the lumpia. If you want more, I'm not. Like I said, I'm tired of it.
I got so much to choose from.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna.
I probably should have told you ahead of time, so that you didn't eat early. I
actually didn't eat much lunch, so this worked out perfectly.
Nice. Cool.
I only had one lunch.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
All right, so I got some questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
First, let's back up a few steps. Staying on the DIY music thing.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get introduced to all that?
Let's see. So growing up, my town. So I grew up in a small town in Iowa called Dubuque, Iowa. It's right on the river, and surprisingly, there was a small scene there, and I was never there for the glory days of it. There's this one random bar, and there are lots of bars in Dubuque, because in the Midwest, there's nothing really to do besides drink.
Yeah.
and go to work.
And like when you, like this town, small town, like small population.
Oh yeah,
not big city.
No, I think it's like the population of like 30,000.
Okay,
something like that. It's not like a podunk town. There's lots of those around Dubuque, but
gotcha.
But yeah, so like, I guess like back in the day, like Foxy Shazam used to play like house shows and like they'd stop in Dubuque and stuff like that. And there are other big bands. Have you heard of Codfish Hollow?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, you need to look into Codfish Hollow. So like, I unfortunately haven't ever gone. It's 45 minutes away from Dubuque, but it's like this big barn that like random huge bands will play in, and it's like Dinosaur Jr. like played there a few years ago. John C. Reilly and his bluegrass band played there a few years ago. There are like a lot of other like big bands I can't think of. Those are the most recent ones. But anyway, so like there's a surprisingly good music scene around. And so anyway, the youth group I used to go to when I was growing up, one of the guys, he's from New Orleans, he's a big music guy, and he wanted to like, I think kind of how I feel about like kids not doing anything like music wise. I think he saw that and he wanted to help foster that. So like before youth group, he would get a group of us together who played music, and we had like a makeshift like jam session, and we'd like try to learn songs, like cover like Linkin Park, or like The Devil Wears Prada and stuff like that. Yeah. And that didn't happen for that long, but I mean that introduced me to like a lot of music and stuff like that. But then in high school, I started going to more shows like in Des Moines and Iowa City. So yeah, I was obsessed with going to shows like metalcore shows and stuff like that. And then through that, I would meet people in the scene. Specifically, I guess the strongest scene around was like in the Quad Cities, which is an hour away from where I'm from. And that's where like all the hardcore and like metal bands were from. Back in Dubuque, there weren't many of those. But anyway, on my private school I went to, we would have a choir festival where we'd sing with other private schools affiliated with whatever schools we were. And one of the schools were there in the Quad Cities. I found kids who liked the same music as me. Like I think I was probably wearing some band shirt, and they're like, "Oh, I love that band," and we connected. And we like got each other's phone numbers and added each other on Facebook, and like, hey, we should seriously start a band. So we started this really crappy metalcore band, and we played like a handful of shows that summer. I think that was like sophomore, junior year. And that was fun. So that was like my first band that I was in. And then I think a year or two after that, I started another hardcore band, which is pretty good. We were called Balto. And we played like a bunch of shows that summer.
Balto?
Yeah, like the dog.
Like the dog? Yeah. That's awesome.
But we played a bunch of shows in the Quad Cities, and like one in Iowa City. But that was a lot of fun. I booked a lot of shows. One of the shows, like, I know money's not everything, but one of the shows, like, I was able to pay out all the bands. I think there was like maybe 5 shows on the 5 bands on the show, and I paid all the bands out like $200 each, and paid myself $300. Partly because the show before, it was like a pay to play situation, and no one showed up, and like I was the only one trying to promote it.
Yeah.
Me and my drummer, he was at my wedding, we were like really good friends. He's straight edge also. We were the only 2 straight edge guys in the band, and for like, let's just say the other guys weren't. And so we were the only ones really making things happen in the band. And I was like, dude, I have like $200 extra. Like, you understand like why I should keep this? He's like, yeah, you should keep it. Because I ended up paying out of pocket like $200 for us to play that other show that no one showed up to.
Yeah.
So that was like the highlight of that band. And then things just kind of fell apart. Not in a bad way. It's just, Yeah. And then I would do like solo stuff in my friend's basement in Dubuque. So I don't know if you're familiar with like any modern pop punk bands or not.
Probably not modern.
Okay. So my friends, they started this band called Kayak Jones, and then they went touring around the Midwest and started touring with like this band called Hot Mulligan. And they became really good friends, and they would come and play Dubuque all the time. And so I'd play like my little acoustic set before they would in my friend's basement called Two Brothers. It was a really gross house and a really even more disgusting. Actually, no, the house was more gross than the basement. It was really bad situation. But we had a bunch of shows there, and I would make tour posters for them. Actually, on my Instagram, there's like my favorite piece of art I've ever made, and it was a tour flyer for Hot Mulligan and this solo act. His name's Bogues. He's amazing. I love him. He needs to not stop making music. But anyway, Hot Mulligan is blown up now, and the drummer from Kayak, who were my friend Brandon, shout out to Brandon, he now drums for them, and like they just played Riot Fest. I was unfortunately not able to go, and because the night they were playing, My Chemical Romance was playing that night, headlining the night, and like I would like be watching them side stage, but I wasn't able to make it out to Chicago. But they've done a bunch of like Euro tours, and I think they even played one show in Costa Rica. They somehow got that to happen. So I mean, it's cool to seeing them like go from like DIY basements to playing stadiums, and like every season like doing US tours and stuff like that. So that's pretty much like the gist of my like music career.
I gotcha.
So
yeah, I won't pry on this very much. I'm just curious. Like, when you mentioned like kind of being straight edge in a private school and stuff, did you go to like a Christian school?
Yeah, I did. And honestly, the decision to be straight edge wasn't like based on religion or anything like that. It was, and I mean, probably had to do with my environment of being in the Midwest. And, you know, when kids don't really have anything to do, they'll either like find something productive or not productive to do. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of my close friends, like at an early age, like got into drinking and stuff like that, and they just changed. And then through like learning like all about all these bands, and then learning what straight edge was, I'm like, oh, I like this. You know, I want to stay, like, I didn't want to, like, I still love my friends, and like all my friends in high school I still talk to this day. But like I didn't like to see that change in character just because they started partying and stuff like that and getting drunk on the weekends. And so I just took it as more of a personal thing. Just, you know, I'm gonna take this stance and not get into that. And the other thing is, like, I wasn't, maybe because I wasn't involved or whatever, but like coming here and finding out what straight edge meant in terms of like how violent straight edge groups can be out here and stuff, like I was like, oh wow, we didn't really have that in the Midwest. And it was more so like being in the minority of like taking like that stand to not partake in those activities, you know.
You said violent?
Yeah, like straight edge crews. I don't know if you're familiar.
So I mean, when you say straight edge, I think I'm hearing it more like what your impression of it was from where you came from. But what are you referring to? Yeah, so I mean, just like the origin of straight edge in New York. First, it kind of started out as like kids taking a stand against like the opioid epidemic, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, it's just seeing people like out of their minds at shows and stuff, and so kids taking that stand, and then it became more of like a club / gang / crew thing. Well, they're referred to as crews, but like, you know, straight edge people going around to shows and like beating people up because they're drinking or they're drunk or whatever, and or like there's like stories of like straight edge kids like burning down liquor stores and stuff like that. And then really,
yeah, and a lot of that. And I'm not a historian or like as versed as I'd like to be on this, because I like sharing this stuff, information. I learned a lot about it here, but I mean, there's a lot of that in Winston. Maybe not so like to the extent of burning liquor stores down, but a lot of like, you got to be careful like where you're at in shows, from the things people have told me around here. And then like in Florida, there's like a big, like there were like big straight edge crews who'd fight people and stuff like that. And like there's this one show I remember going to. It was like this band called Riding Out, and they had just played it was in Chicago, and I think they had just played a show in Michigan, and the show got shut down because like a straight edge crew came in with like chains with padlocks and like pipes, and they're like fighting people. So
there's a part of me. Okay, so first, this is new information for me, if I'm being real. Like but in a weird way, I understand something about it. Mm-hmm. I'm putting the information together in my head, trying to understand why I understand it. But what what can you tell me about why this phenomenon is? Like, what is their ideology all about that encourages them to like act on their belief in this way?
I mean, I'm just gonna assume it's, you know, putting themselves on a pedestal and then like, for lack of a better term, or like, you know, or like mob mentality, you know, like, and so you think you're better than someone else, and then like tough guy attitudes, and like usually all these groups are like all men and stuff, so it's like, you know, kind of just bullying and enforcing what you think on others.
Yeah.
and like hardcore and punk is already violent in nature, like inherently. So it's like it's not that it's acceptable. It shouldn't be, but it kind of makes sense. Or like it fits the it's like on brand, I guess. I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean about understanding part of it in a way. And like you can think of other like gang sort of things that have formed in the past that have formed around the idea of being sort of in opposition to some aspect of the modern world or modernity or hedonism or who knows what, just something. They just pick an enemy and say we are willing to be violent over that enemy. But it's so interesting to me. I would think that, I mean, because so many of our bad decisions are fueled by alcohol, you know. It's so weird to think about those decisions being formulated around the idea of like we enforce sobriety.
Yeah.
That's so strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a thing.
No,
so.
yeah, and it was a thing here in Winston. So, which I didn't realize until moving here and talking to people about stuff like that. Because, I mean, like, because I always thought of it like it's a personal thing, but then, I think I had like one other straight edge friend growing up, and like him and I were pretty like clean cut guys, and so, yeah, it was just weird to hear that, like at least the understanding I got is like if you claimed edge, then there's a possibility people would look at you in a negative light. Not that I'm doing this to be seen as like better than anyone or anything, but I always saw it as like something to be good, like known as in a good way. And honestly, like back home, not really anyone knew what being straight edge was. So it's like I didn't get to explain like, oh, that's such a cool thing you're doing, blah blah blah. But here it's just like, what kind of straight edge guy are you? You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like we're pretty removed from that, and a lot of those guys have just grown up anyway, and they're like all in their 30s and 40s. From what I understand,
It's kind of moved on.
Yeah,
that point.
and like with kids, like I said, like not being as involved, it hasn't been carried on.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I asked that question because I also went to a Christian school and like
nice.
came from probably a different background or whatever. Like based on I wasn't in an environment like Iowa or whatever.
Yeah.
I was just here. But also like stories I've heard from my other friends who come from. I think I grew up thinking that my religious experience was particularly intense, and I think in some ways it was. But the friends I've made over the years, I've learned that there's other versions of really intense religious experiences.
Definitely.
They all had different ones than what I had. But, you know, for me, I think definitely for me, coming from that upbringing, I was pretty eager probably to get out into the world and experience stuff. But I think it's kind of interesting and probably quite wise. I guess it sounds very wise to hear where you were coming from and deciding on that path, because I can't say, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure everybody has their different relationships with vices and with whatever. Me personally, I don't regret finding my way around a world that consisted of certain pleasurable temptations. But did they really add much to my life? I don't know. Like if I had the focus at like age 20 to be like, I'm gonna stay, I don't know, away from negative temptations, I could see how that could be a positive path to be on.
Yeah. And I think one thing that kind of like helped enforce my thinking was, so when I would bring up like, oh, I'm straight edge, and like it's funny but also sad, but like, and there are jokes online and like shirts made about this, but like I would always get like, oh, well then what do you do for fun? I'm just like, I mean, it's sad that like if you need a substance to like have like fun and find like worth and like reason, whatever in the world, it's like, I mean, if I don't want to be a part of that, you know. And I feel like I'm already a person who has like an abnormal amount of energy, and honestly over the past like year or two it's kind of like gone down. So I can't stay up till like 3 a.m. anymore as like I used to, but I mean still like I'm a pretty optimistic guy, but yeah, I mean I don't want to like my human experience to have to be for it to be at its best, to have like I have to put on a certain set of goggles for that to happen, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and going back to like the Christian school thing, my experience I feel like is pretty positive, and it kind of goes along with like DIY hardcore scene, that mine was like the opposite of a private school in that we were poor. And so like part of that being we had a lot of kids, like the majority of kids weren't rich kids, and so we had like poor kids, we had rich kids. And then we also had a lot of foreign exchange students, because schools get paid to house foreign exchange students. So a lot of the way our school paid the bills was invite a bunch of kids from around the world. So I was like, exposed to like a lot of different like beliefs and like cultures also. And so like wanting to like, so, and I didn't realize that this wasn't normal until like I moved out here and like started, or like even I mentioned before, like I talked to all my friends from high school. I'm still cool with all of them, and like hearing people when they graduate high school, like they don't talk to any of them, and so I'm just like, oh, that's foreign to me.
Yeah.
But like being in that environment, it forced me to, and not everyone there like believed in what I believed, like both the foreign exchange student kids and the American kids. So like, but we were such small numbers, like I was kind of forced to get along and build relationships, whether I wanted to or not, with people who were different than me. And so, and I mean, that's like a big thing about like hardcore DIY, stuff like that. And, you know, coming together for like one cause and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so like, even with this, like not everyone's Filipino, but I want to share what that is. And I want like to make this culture known and familiar to people.
Yeah.
So it's not as foreign, and you know, I feel like the more you understand people, the more you can like connect and things like that. And that's another reason why I purposely like to be involved in like know a lot about a lot of things, so that I can find that common ground and make connections with the people, whether it be food, music, woodworking, like all these. I'm like into a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Which can be a good and bad thing.
You do woodworking as well?
No, I just love, like there's like a time, like a year in my life where I was just obsessed with like watching woodworking videos. And that's, we were talking about houses before we started, but if I ever like get a house, I'd love to have like a shed or like a big garage and like have my own shop and stuff like that. But that was just like one of the random like interests that I was listing off that I know more than I guess a normal person would know, but yeah, so
that is pretty cool hearing about your experience. It's so different from what I came from, and I think I don't know if legally it's true, but me coming up in the school that I did, it was like not multicultural at all. It was like, when you think about private schools, it was not the sort where parents were paying a ton of money for their kids to go there, more than they would have liked to, I'm sure, or something like that. You know, my mom definitely sacrificed for us to afford to go here.
Yeah, likewise.
So, you know, whatever they did, I don't know how much they spent, but it was a sacrifice, and that I am not taking for granted. But in terms of private schools, it wasn't like a high end one, but I think it was very enforced. Like the only people that go here, all the people that go here believe the same thing.
Oh yeah.
It was almost entirely Baptist. There were some exceptions to that, but there was like no Catholics. There was like no other religion, for definitely not. And I would say, I mean, it was a K through 12 school. There was probably 200 or so kids in the whole school. My graduating class was like,
sounds like the same as mine.
about the same size.
Yeah.
My graduating class was about 22, I think, kids.
Ours was, I think, 21, and we had like 8 foreign exchange students, and we were the biggest graduating class ever, still to this day.
Really?
Yeah. My brother graduated with like 3 people.
8 foreign exchange students?
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Your brother graduated with like a class of 3?
Yeah, class of 3.
Wow.
It's either 3 or 2. Something like that. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Huh.
they've grown since then. So we might not have, we might not hold the record, but
At the time, you did.
yeah, yeah. And I guess another thing I wanted to bring up about my experience is the teachers I had played a huge role in just who I am today. And one of them in particular, like we would go, and obviously different times, because I don't know how many parents would be willing to trust a teacher like my parents trusted this teacher, but like we'd hang out, and he used to be in bands and stuff also, and he really saw, like, he made that connection with me through music, and we had similar interests musically, but he used that as like a foothold and to speak into my life and stuff like that. But we would, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the restaurant Perkins.
I feel silly because everything you ask me about, I haven't heard of.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if it's a Midwestern thing or not, but it's like a little nicer version of Denny's.
Okay, I know Denny's.
Yeah, he was huge into Denny's, and we'd go on road trips all the time. But anyway, we only had a Perkins in town, and that was the only 24-hour restaurant. And so we would just hang out and talk about like life. Until like one day, I remember we were at Perkins on a school night till 6 a.m. and school started at 8. And so, I mean, man, yeah, I had a lot of those teachers, like, really, like, they got paid dirt, but they were there for the right reason, and they really poured into us. And I mean, I think that's another huge reason why my experience was so positive. And it wasn't just the kids, again, who believed the same as them. It was just, like, every kid they cared about at that level. And yeah, and so I forget where I was going with that, but yeah, that was like a big part of my experience, is the teachers also.
Yeah, that actually ties into another question I wanted to ask. Yeah. So I'm glad you did bring it up. It sounds like what you've described so far, it sounds like you care a lot about like the direction someone might find themselves in, and it sounds like you were impacted a lot by these teachers. Is that what guided you toward counseling? Oh, yeah,
exactly. It's exactly what guided me towards counseling. So, like, in middle school, I was, like, a really bad kid. I was a really big bully, actually. And then I had one, like, I'll just do the short version of the story because I don't know if it's good for me to say it online to be on forever. But, like, I made this really bad post about my principal on Facebook. And this was, like, in the early days of Facebook. She had, like, just suspended this one kid who I thought was cool. He's not cool. For doing some dumb thing. And I wrote on his wall. I didn't message him. I wrote on his wall, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I was just saying, like, WTF, like, all these things that I would never say in real life. And then, like, before school, this teacher, she pulls me aside and she's like, hey, I need you to come to my room. I need to talk to you. I'm like, am I in trouble? And she's like, yeah, kinda. And then she pulled up the post, read it word for word, like cussing and all, which was like super weird for me to hear my teacher cuss. Yeah. And then she's like, you need to, like, she's like, everything you post, like, will be on there forever. And I'm so glad I got that lesson at an early age. 'Cause like now I'm so, like, not calculated, but like intentional with everything I post, both in my personal stuff and for this. Shoot, what was your question again?
Well, we were just talking about like how you got toward counseling.
Oh yeah. So that year I grew up a lot more. That teacher was really hard on not just me, but all of us. And it really helped me make a jump, like, maturity wise. And like, I was also a little depressed in that time also. And I was going through some tough times. And so when I was thinking of, like, what do I want to do? My school didn't have a school counselor. And so when I found out that was a job, I was like, oh, wow. Like, I really appreciate what these teachers did for me. I'd love to do that for other kids. And so ever since middle school, I wanted to be a school counselor and just, like, really pour into, like, kids and just be someone. Because, I mean, and, like, as I've grown older and been out of that environment, you know, there's not many, like advocates for kids in schools and or like adults who are willing to get on that level with a kid, you know. And so it's only like enforced my thinking. And honestly, like a year or two ago, I took a break from grad school because, like, I don't know, and because I was taking some classes about, like, the more administrative side of school counseling, and I was like, oh, this doesn't sound like fun. It's more like paperwork, and and like red tape than what I thought. And so I took a break from pursuing that and tried to get into like other fields, and miserably failed and got ignored and no callbacks from anything. So I was like, I took it as a sign, like I should probably just finish. And like that, when I decided to go back and finish, I'd started at the middle school I work at now, and I like didn't want to do middle school at all. Like I thought I wanted to do high school, and I mean I love Reynolds and I still coach, so that's another thing I do. I coach. I still coach at Reynolds High School soccer, and then, but like high school kids, like I was like, maybe I don't want to do high school kids, and I started in elementary, and I don't like elementary at all, because you just like, I can't stand talking like a baby all day. But then like middle school, they moved me to middle school because I got rid of my job at my position at Reynolds. And I was like, not too excited, but I mean, I've loved middle school ever since, being there. Like I started an anime club. That's another one of my interests. Started an anime club for the kids. I love terms of music. I'm going to design a music shirt for the band teacher, because like the band teacher at the school I work at, like they're amazing, but after school they have times for the kids to come and practice their instruments, and I like make it I personally like it because I, as someone who enjoys music, I like hearing the kids play or whatever, but I also try to go down there every day after school just to like encourage the kids and let them know like this is cool. Don't let anyone think that this isn't cool, because it is cool and you need to keep doing it. And like those kids really care about like getting better at their instrument, which is like super impressive. And so like I'm always going down there like making a big fuss, like, yo, y'all are shredding, and I like always like call them the shredders. So I'm like gonna make like a shredder shirt for them or something like that, just to like, you know, make it more like cool that they're doing that, and hopefully more kids can catch on. And that's the reason why like I did the anime club. Like so many kids at my school wore anime shirts, so I wanted to give them the space to like be able to express that more and like let them know like who cares if people think you're weird, like at least like you're here enjoying something you enjoy and you're not just like sitting at home. And especially after COVID, like giving those kids those opportunities and spaces like super impactful. And like even parents who are like apprehensive, because there is a lot of weird stuff in anime, and I make it a point to the kids like we're not discussing any of that at our club, but like apprehensive parents were like, I appreciate you doing this, like giving my kid like something to do after school, especially after COVID. So, and I also didn't know at the time, because my school didn't have clubs. Like we're like the biggest club in the school. We have like 30-40 kids come. And so last year was the first year, and I had no idea what I was doing. This year I have a little better idea of what I'm doing, but we still had like 30-40 kids show up our first meeting. So
man, things change so much over time.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like doing those things is like, I mean, a lot of it is just like I'm just copying and taking notes from like those teachers that poured into me, you know, like finding their kids' interests and like helping them, like encouraging them to explore that more. You know? So.
Absolutely. I mean, I know what it feels like to be in I was in band. I was like, there was a short window of time where I was in like the public school system north of here in King. And even there, it was like I had friends and stuff in band. I was in band for like a year, and there was just always this thought about it, like something about it being organized and like having a teacher and stuff. And there's this temptation to like let yourself think it's kind of lame to be involved in something like this. And when I was in high school too, I know that there were kids there that were into anime. It's like sorry, I know you're straight edge, but I just talk a certain way.
Yeah, you're fine.
It is a culture of its own, and for a lot of kids, for forever, it's a culture that's been like laughed at and not always fully appreciated in a mainstream way by a lot of people. And just like I feel like that's such a sign of the times too, that it's like it's in keeping with this new attitude that we have in a lot of ways. It's like, let's not vilify everybody for every interest they have that's not like football or something. For sure.
Well, I mean, you bring up sports. Like, I think that's like another thing that I have an advantage with is that I like anime, I like music, I also love sports, and so like I'm a huge like NFL fan. Super sad that the Packers lost today, but like And I played soccer in college. I play like all my life. I coach now. So and I coach at the middle school too. So like I try to like be present in all of those things, not just for me because I enjoy all of them, but for the kids too, to show them like, you know, like I like sports. I'd be considered a jock, but I love anime. I think I hang out with the band kids,
Yeah.
you know, and that's okay, you know. And again, like that's me seeing like no one had the same like that my experience of being around people who are different than me is not the norm, and I want that to be embraced more. And so around the kids that I'm with. So,
I love that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And like and part of and like even with the food stuff, like I don't think of myself as just like the Filipino. I mean, on my Instagram, my personal one, my bio is like straight edge egg roll guy. But like I don't see myself as that. I see myself as me, who's Filipino, and I'm just trying to share my culture. But there's more to me than my culture. There's more to everyone than just like one thing. And so, I mean, it's good because I feel like that's one thing that like just needs to be talked about more, is like we are more than just this one thing, and that we can find like connections through it. Like there's not just one thing that you connect to me on. Like, oh, your in-law is Filipino, that's great. I also like football. Let's talk about that too, you know?
Yep.
Like, yeah. So
I'm 100. That's probably the philosophy. The closest thing to my philosophy that I guess I live on is something like that. The individual, I think, is more important than the whatever, like the superficial aspects of our identity or something like that. Like,
definitely.
you know, I don't experience life in a way where I particularly like relate to people on the level of ethnicity or gender or hair color or eye color or whatever. There's things about my identity, particularly like my grandmother is Hispanic, and I love that little bit of me. That's just like, cool. That's a culture that's kind of, I guess it's like I associate it with the past or something, and I'm like, I am interested in that, but aside from that, I mean, yeah, I think like the individual person, you know, is kind of multiplicitous in that way, and kind of
definitely
has a lot to them.
Yeah, and I think part of me thinking this way is like being like my mom never taught me Tagalog, which is the original language of is the main language of the Philippines. And so, and like there was a smaller Filipino community, but we didn't really spend that much time with them. My mom hangs out with them all now, which I'm like, why didn't we do that growing up? And also I was like kind of scared too, because like when I was little I was like chubbier, so they'd always like run up to me and pinch my cheeks. So like whenever my mom went to parties, I never wanted to go. So I guess, and like also being in like I think in like until like middle high school, we got all the foreign exchange students, like being the only Asian kid in school, like it's not that I like discarded my like ethnic background, but like I kind of learned to like find my identity and things that and not that. And so like to be honest, like a lot of this stuff I'm like not exploring for the first time, but really like taking time to like dive deeper into who I am like ethnically.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like it's not like a huge part of who I am. Which I mean, I don't think is a bad thing.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of doing. I've been looking for opportunities to kind of learn about Cuban culture, and I do that with music, and I do that with everywhere that I can, like with food and stuff. But yeah, like there's this separation with it. It's like almost like in my brain. I don't know if this is what you experience, but in my experience of that, it's and which for me it's maybe a little less. It sounds like for you that was more of an obvious thing. Like if I walk where I went to high school, they didn't necessarily see me as like Hispanic looking. You know what I mean? But regardless of that, regardless of the fact that there's a bit of that separation from it, yeah, I've been like looking for opportunities to like kind of experience it more.
Yeah.
But that's more like this. I'm aware of the fact that it's this idea I have in my head of what that culture might potentially be and how I might be able to access it and feel a little bit more like I'm a part of it. But then there's like me. There's like I'm separate from that.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
like I'm isolated with my own actual interests that really like don't depend on that identity at all.
No, I feel the same way, and I think, and I was wondering, that was the thing I was gonna say. I was like, I wonder if other like they call like people like me like Philam, so a Filipino American, like kids feel that way, But I think what I've been taking it also as is like, and I think, and what I think is good with like representation is like I can show kids who are maybe like boxed in by that identity, like you can do other things than just what your parents. So like in the Filipino culture, like it's always the joke that your parents want you to be a doctor or a nurse. And I mean, anyway, thankfully my mom wasn't like that. But like being able to show them like you can do music, you can do other these things, like and like I'm Filipino and I'm doing all this stuff, you know. You don't have to stick with this thing. I think of my friend, another music friend. He's in this metal band. They're huge right now. They're actually on the tour with Bring Me the Horizon. Their guitarist, he's my friend. His name's Nico, and he's Filipino. And so like it's really cool like seeing on his Instagram stories a lot of like other Filipino kids are like posting him like my favorite Filipino guitarist, blah blah blah. It's just like knowing that like someone like you can do those things and they're doing it, and that you can do it too. And like but it goes beyond culture too, and that like one of the things I like, there's this he was a Filipino guitarist for this metal band called My Children My Bride. And I read his book, and he was talking about tour life and how he also has a degree. I'm like, oh, you can like go to pursue education and still do music, and that was a foreign concept to me. Or like, the lead singer of this pop punk band called Tiger's Jaw, like he has his master's in English. I'm like, wow, he took time to like get his master's and is full time touring. And
right.
It's just like seeing other people do things that you're like from where you are. It's just like, oh wow, I didn't realize that was a possibility. So like modeling that is like important, I think.
I mean, dude, right on target with that. Which this is funny because in saying this, it revealed like the band names that you're naming off for like the hardcore scene are so much more interesting and vivid than in other genres. I feel like, which is really funny, but. The guy that came to mind was like the lead singer of the Fleet Foxes did the same thing. Like they kind of reached a point where they stopped, and he went and got his master's or his PhD or something or other.
Yeah.
And what that reminds me of now, as we talk about it, it's like I hadn't thought about this. I've expressed something like this in other conversations on here before, but this is right on target with it. Something like even something like a craft like music. I don't know if. Maybe it would be the same for me if I were making food or something. I don't know. But I reached a point with music where I started to feel like, like the identity of the musician is a little bit too narrow for me. I feel like I also want to be involved in like other kinds of writing projects. I mean, I think around the time where I was having this feeling for the first time was when I started doing freelance journalism in town. And I was just like, yeah, I don't want to only perform music. I want to like write articles and stuff too. I want to like write essays. I wouldn't, if I could write a book that people would be interested in, that would be super cool. Like, why is that not good for a musician to do? Like, I remember I was 26 or something, or 20, maybe I was like 27 when these ideas started happening, and I was like, is it all right? Is it okay for someone to like not just try to be a musician? Like, can you be more than one thing or whatever? Can you be more than a filmmaker? Can you be more than a fashion? Like, are we supposed to just do one thing?
Yeah. Or you think about time. Like, do I have time to do something else?
Right. What happens if you want to be an expert at more than like someone like Tom Ford comes to mind. I don't know what he's up to. He might not be important anymore. I'm not sure, but he's like a world-renowned fashion designer, but also filmmaker. It's like, I don't know which of those he is more. I think more of a fashion designer maybe, but that's just in my narrow
I didn't know he
mind.
was a filmmaker, so
yeah. I mean, like
I knew about him from fashion, so
yeah.
That's
somebody like Kanye, his big priority right now is probably fashion and making money more, and people still want music from him, but the question is like, is his willingness to step out of music and do fashion, is that somehow a net loss for his musical abilities? I don't think so.
No, yeah. Well, I don't know if you heard about Kid Cudi recently. He just put out a Netflix movie. It's called,
really?
Yeah, I really want to watch it. I haven't had time because I don't have time for anything in my life. Out of the billion things I do, I think it's called Intergalactic. Have you seen Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse?
No, I've seen a lot of it, but not all of it.
So it's like a adult drama in that style of animation. Yeah, it looks crazy. He did the soundtrack for it, but in interviews, he's been saying like, I kind of want to be done with the Kid Cudi persona and focus on filmmaking.
Dude.
So
yeah, I know that feeling, man.
Or like even like Donald Glover with.
He was exactly what was coming to mind. And really, if you want to know the truth, what I think of him, I think him at his peak is Atlanta. Like, and I'm sure somebody would say, I love him as a Childish Gambino.
I still need to watch Atlanta. My friend has been raving about the newest season.
And I haven't actually caught the newest season yet. I need to. I've been like kind of detoxing from TV for like months now. I've been like not watching anything. But
did you finish Better Call Saul, or have you watched it?
I have not watched Better Call Saul.
That's the last thing I watched. But no, I just saw an article recently that said like Donald Glover was way too funny for Community or something, like he was ahead of his time. So it made me want to watch Atlanta even more. So
man, Atlanta is genius. That's
the only thing I've heard is like it's just so good.
It is. It's like, I mean, I don't know. It's like the cultural spirit of Childish Gambino, like in a whole story, and it's so quality. It's just so smart and interesting and like free. And that's anyway. All that to say, I mean, as we've talked through the idea of sort of like identities that we're born with in terms of ethnicity or whatever, I feel like we've reached at least I feel like I've reached the point in artistry where I'm way more interested in like how many ways I can be creative than I am like strictly. I'm deeply in love with songwriting, and I'm deeply in love with knowing how good and how deeply devoted how good I can get at that and how devoted I can be to that.
Yeah.
But I'm also interested in like how far does my creativity go? Like, can I be a great scriptwriter? Could I be a great woodworker? What else could I do?
I think that's like what you said. You said how far. I think that's the key. Because I think about when I was like trying to figure out other things to do. I love graphic design, and I picked up some clients and would do some work, and like just like just working with clients and that part of graphic design, I like realized like maybe I shouldn't do graphic design because I'm like I don't like working with clients and like changing what I think looks good for what they think looks good, which I think looks bad.
Right.
And
that's a big part of it.
So it's just like finding how far you want to get into that different field or realm or whatever. And I've come to the conclusion like, you know, I just like doing it for me and like people who I know like my work and appreciate what I do. And also like I'm really bad with deadlines. And so like I could never like I don't feel like it'd be fair for me to take on a client or take on clients because I don't know if I can meet their deadlines, and that's something that I'm personally not good at. And so being able to, or like, yeah, just like finding like you may be interested in this, but you also may not be good at it. And so I think you can still partake in something through appreciation and not just like getting good at it. But
yeah.
And with the food thing, that's where I'm at right now, is like how far do I want to go with this, you know? Like, and there's through doing this, I've like one of the things I first did was like I need to follow other people who do what I do on Instagram. There's this one restaurant in San Francisco called the Lumpia Company, and they kill it. They I always forget, is it Oracle Park or whatever baseball stadium the Giants play in? They have like stands selling lumpia in that park, and
that's cool.
Yeah, and they have like a fleet of food trucks. They have like 4 locations, and they started out of like a serving window, like a walk-up window. So it's just like I want to do that, but should I do that? Like, you know. So yeah, I mean, with Kuya Bear, I'm like kind of in the midst of like figuring out what I want to do next. Like, do I want to be in? I guess going back to what you said earlier, like, do I want to be an expert at this, or can I? Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm evaluating right now with all this. So.
I mean, do you mind if I ask about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, like, tell me about that thought process. I guess, like, what's on the table? I guess.
Honestly, time and how that affects my personal life. Like, cause like, you know, I'm married. I don't have any kids yet. I mean, if I had kids, it probably would not be a thought, but
like you wouldn't do it, you mean?
No, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we end up having kids later and I have things, because right now I'm the only one essentially. I mean, I have the girl that helps me, but she just comes and helps sell, and she does a great job. But I roll everything by myself, which I've gotten good at, and I feel like I've like really honed in on the process, and I'm as efficient as I can be. But like starting a business by yourself and figuring out how to do that, and I have no business background whatsoever. It's like a really big hurdle. And for me to be able to do this financially, I have to take on those investors, which I'm fine with. They're people I trust, and they're people that I feel like trust me. So I don't feel that pressure, but I mean, it's just a big risk, big time commitment, especially during the off season. So not in the summer. So while I'm still, cause I want to keep my career in education as well.
Right.
So it's kind of just like figuring out how far I want to go, and if I want to do it, and if I can do it in a way that I can still be a good husband, be a good teacher, you know, and be good at the things that that I prioritize. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the thought process behind that.
Have you thought about like, well, first of all, when I've seen you, you've had sort of the mobile setup, but
yeah.
You talked about like people being interested in you having a food truck.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a food truck at this point?
No, I've gotten a quote for one. I will say if people have gotten this far on the podcast, they're getting some pretty good insider information because I've already like worked on some designs for some merch for a possible like crowdfunding campaign, just to like pad how much I'd have to borrow from stuff. So like the way I'd want to do it is like order the trailer or like do a crowdfunding campaign, order the trailer, blah, 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 and then start in the spring. But yeah, I pretty much could do it like tomorrow if I wanted to. But I'm just kind of like sitting on it, like really trying to marinate and like think about like what my priorities are and how serious I want this to be. Financially though, like next year I'll have to like do a whole school year of internship, which I don't get paid for. Right. So fiscally, it'd be good to have this on the side so I can like pay bills while I'm like working for free for the school system for a whole year, which is kind of dumb, but not kind of, it is dumb. I feel like you should get compensated for
you definitely
your work.
should.
But you know, that's how education is.
Weird how that works.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how they do that in a lot of fields, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty shady.
Definitely.
Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to share this too. Sorry, this isn't really related. I just like sharing this story.
Go for it, man.
Another like way how this relates to music. I don't know if you saw, but I like booked a show, and I like sponsored it and everything. But I booked a show in my friend's loft, and if you ever want to use it as a venue, let me know. She wants to do more shows in her loft, but
I need more venues.
I got you. And I can show you pictures later. But this spoken word guy, he was doing like a house show tour, and he needed a North Carolina date. And at first I didn't reach out to him, and then because I was just didn't have time and I was being lazy, and I was like, oh, whatever, it passed, maybe another time he can do a show. And then he posted the whole list, and he still needed a North Carolina date. So through Kuya Bear I was able to book shows again.
That's cool.
Yeah, and we were able to pay him his guarantee, and I don't think we made some money after, but I gave it to my friend whose loft we were using to make up for the money for having a bunch of we had like 50 people show up in her house. So it was cool. I made food. I cooked for all the artists beforehand. We had Liv Douglas. I don't know if you know her. And then Spencer Aubrey. You know Spencer, right? He DJs PS Etiquette. He goes to all the fancy groceries.
Yeah.
He did some poetry.
I don't know if he knows me, but I know him.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
He has his master's in poetry, so he's a good person to talk to about writing.
Really?
If you want to, yeah.
Man, I need to have him over here.
You should, yeah. I can easily set that up if you want.
Yeah, that might help. Yeah, I mean, I've seen him perform and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen him do because he doesn't do like freestyle sort of poetry performance or
yeah,
whatever?
Sometimes he does at the pub.
Yeah.
He's made music with Tiffany Thompson also. He's featured on some of her songs.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk to him. I just haven't
have you
made
had
friends
Tiffany
with him.
on the show?
No.
Oh, she's cool. I met her at, there's like some arts coalition thing at the public house, and I did food for that. And she's a local artist who you should interview. But we had a really weird small connection in that she grew up in the town I grew up. And her dad like started the church. My parents got married.
Really?
Yeah, it was like super small town. Like, I mean, super small world moment. I'm like, and we were like, I was like, oh, have you been to Beechers? Have you been to Flora Pool? And she's like, oh yeah, I love all those places. I was like, what the heck? And there's like another person I met who has family that lives in Dubuque also. So it's like, you know, the most random thing, like people in Winston like know about Dubuque, Iowa.
Yeah,
so.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Super fun. So, okay, I wanted to ask you about this. I'm not really the most versed person in business either, but did you ever think of it as like, maybe I could, if I really love this brand, want to keep it alive or whatever, could you ever picture yourself in the future, like running it from a distance, maybe managing it and stuff?
Honestly, like I would love to get a business partner who could like handle things on the weekdays and like the off season when I'm doing other stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, that's just the hardest thing, like meeting other people who are like you, that you trust to do something like that. And not, I mean, not just to like to stay on brand, but I feel like it'd be disingenuous not to. But like I'd want to like to be someone who has like a connection at least to like Filipino culture and like not a passion, but like an appreciation for it as well. And so that'd make things so much easier. Or even just like to have someone to work for me, because like my helper, she's in high school and she's about to like go into college and start a career not in food.
Yeah.
And so I've thought about that a lot, and it'd be really helpful, but nothing's coming along yet, so you never know, something could happen. But yeah,
I'm glad that I haven't gone through the usual litany of questions that I ordinarily would, like in a really predictable sort of line. But I'm going to ask you a biographical question nonetheless.
I feel like I talk too much sometimes and I kind of forced that to be skipped. So
oh man, like, nah,
sorry.
It's great. But no, I wanted to ask you, like, I don't really know. Maybe you can tell me a bit about how you ended up in Winston and what that's been like for you, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, my wife and I met in college.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in the town I grew up in. It's called Emmaus Bible College.
Okay.
So I grew up and, went to school there. We met there. She was only there for like their 1 year program, and we started dating. And so she stayed in Iowa until I graduated. She met me my sophomore year. And so like, she stayed there for like 2 years, and she hated it because the winter. And I love Iowa, and that's the other thing. Maybe I'm just like so optimistic and like overly appreciative of things. Where I'm like, because I mean, most people they want to get out of Dubuque, but I love and appreciate Dubuque. Anyway, she was like, okay, we're not gonna be together if we stay here. So I'm like, that's fine. I don't have at the same time. I'm okay with like going and being anywhere. So I was like, okay, fine. So we moved here. That was before when I graduated, and then I couldn't find a job in North Carolina at all. So for my first year, the only place that called me back, like one of two places, both of them being in Virginia, I worked in Virginia. So I worked in Virginia for almost a year, like 10, 11 months.
Living here and working there?
Yes. So the job was at a therapeutic boarding school for boys. It was an outdoor therapeutic boarding school. So it's like boys who were about to go to prison or their parents couldn't handle them and had nothing else to do.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's best job I've ever had in my life. So much fun. So we lived in the woods. So I lived in the woods 5 days out of the week. We built all the shelters by hand, without power tools, with just materials on the land. So we would cut down trees, and like use like joinery to make, and we had tarps and stuff. But I worked there 5 days out of the week, and then like that following March, so I started in August. And then in March I got married, and then we were like, yeah, this isn't going to work. You can't be married and work, be there 5 days out of the week. It's like too hard. Cause because like it was 3 hours away. So like I got 48 hours off. So so minus 6 hours of driving, and let's say like 10 hours for sleep. That's
Yeah.
like, or like whatever. So like, what is that? 16 minus 48. I only got like 20, 30. I'm so bad at math.
You say 16 minus 48?
Yeah.
So,
32, right?
wait.
Is that 32 hours?
60 minus 48? Is that what you said?
16.
16 out of 48?
Yeah, take that away because like those hours are hours I'm not at home. You know, so I'm only really home for like less than 48 hours. Let's just say that to be easy. So like I was barely ever home. So then I left, and then my wife had a friend who got me a job at this after school program that had a summer camp, and I worked at the summer camp, which is how I got. And the summer camp was in the schools, and a lot of teachers worked in the schools, and so I told them I'm going to go to school to be a school counselor. That's what I want to do. And like, oh, we'd love to have you. And then I ended up working at that elementary school, and then here we are. So.
All right. So I know this wasn't the most important part of the story, but I have to ask about this job in Virginia.
Oh yes, I love talking about this job.
Like, you got to tell me about this.
So much fun, honestly. Like, I wish I went to that school because so good, so good. I still talk to like a lot of my coworkers and some of the kids to this day. But so the way it's set up is that kids are brought there. They have to stay there for a year at the minimum. And like I said, we get kids from different backgrounds. So we had like one kid. I don't think he'll listen to this, but like he's like one of the worst people I've ever met in my life. And his dad was the creative director at Ford. And we'd also have kids who were like illegal immigrants that the state made them go to this program for them to stay. And like the kid I'm referring to, he was from El Salvador, and he was like part of MS-13.
Wow.
And he claimed, and we didn't doubt him, that he's killed 8 people before. So you get those kids, like top to bottom, all kinds of kids.
That's serious.
Yeah, it was pretty serious. And so my job was to essentially teach them social skills and like how to manage your emotions and things like that. And so like the way it would work, so my shift was like Sunday to Saturday. No. Yeah, I left Saturday morning, I think. Or Friday. Yeah, I left Friday afternoon. Anyway, so I'd go in on Sunday, go to sleep. Monday, we'd have a regular day. And so the kids, they had school all year round. So the way it worked for the kids was when you start, you don't go to school at all. You have to earn each school hour, which at first for a kid who like deals with like already with truancy and not caring about school at all, you know, you think that'd be a good thing. But when you're not in school, you're working in a campsite with me, and we're cutting down trees, we're skinning logs, we're hauling logs on our shoulders. We're pushing 100-pound wheelbarrows of dirt and rocks places. And there's always projects to be done in campsite. So eventually the kids are like, okay, I don't want to be in campsite all day. And then for them to earn their first school hour, and they earn school by the hour, they have to first in the group, they have to be approved by the group to like, we think you're ready and mature to be in school, because the school is a privilege, and like it's the only place that has, besides the food hall, that has AC. The kids get to take their shoes off when it's the school building. They get to like go on the computer, not for like themselves, but they like watch videos for school and stuff. And so the kids decide whether they can earn the school hour. So that's what I'm doing during the day. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Monday we eat in the lodge, the food hall. But on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they call it cookout days, where we cook everything in campsite over this like homemade, the kids make it out of like rocks and cement. And it's like a grill, and we use like cast iron and stuff. And the kids make the menus themselves. They're given a budget, they're given a list of like prices and menu items, and they say like they make each meal for each cookout, like the day before or the Sunday before. That's one of the jobs. And then, so we do cookout, and during cookout, the staff, we choose like 1 or 2 kids to what we call it push issues on. So there's like a lot of lingo in these jobs, and like a lot of like other jobs. So like in college, I worked in group homes, and like all those places have like their own lingo and stuff. But anyway, if like a kid is having problems, we usually say that they're being dishonest, or there's some dishonesty in their life. So whether that be like they're not working through something emotionally, or they're actually like hiding that they're like stealing stuff, or being anyway, or like internalizing something towards like a staff or another person.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's say I'm going to push an issue on you. So in the morning, we'd call a group meeting, which I'll get to that, what group meetings are in a second. But I'd be like, okay, Tyler, I've noticed you've kind of been isolating this week. And so we're going to go do a solo work project, and we're pushing this issue on you, blah, blah, blah. And usually the kids would either like flip out, or they would, most of the time they flip out because they don't want to go in school, or they wanted to work on a work project. And so the work projects are usually really hard, and we do them all with them. So like I cut down the trees with the kids. I push like 100-pound wheelbarrows of rocks with the kids. I dig up holes of dirt with the kids. And like, we're not done doing the work project until they get honest and work through that issue. And they do that for 2 days. And usually when they're working through the issue, they don't eat with the group either, and stuff like that. But that was a cool thing that I liked. And then the group meeting aspect is another huge key thing of the job, is that any kid can call a group meeting on any person, whether it be a student or me. And so, so let's say, like we're both students, and I see you being rude to like another student, or like picking on them, or whatever it is, and I call a group meeting, or like you were rude to me, and I'll be like, Tyler, I really didn't like. You call a group meeting, so everyone has to sit down. They can't talk while other people are talking, all that stuff. And I'd be like, hey, Tyler, I don't appreciate like how you're treating me today. Like, what's going on? And so like it really teaches the kids to like be upfront with like how they feel and stuff like that. And we don't discourage them from like yelling and stuff. Like we'd yell at the kids, but we like paired with like I feel statements, and we explain like, I'm so mad right now, like you're making me so mad. Like I'd learned so much about like how to communicate my emotions and feelings through that job also. And it usually took about like 3 months for a kid to get what we'd say bought in, and to where they're like actually using the things and tools we're teaching them. And but yeah, like we would like build like sleeping tents. We had I think we called it a priv, which was like a 10-foot hole we dig. That's where they pooped and stuff. Oh yeah, another thing about the groups is that they were like 10 kids at the most, and 2 staff at a time. So it was either there's a staff, like regular staff, and then there was a supervisor, and like on the weekends it'd be a supervisor and a staff. And then yeah, so it was just like me and my partner, and just like these 10 boys who are bad. But you just see a lot of like maturity and change in these kids.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so much fun.
Like there's something so subtle about that. Like that sounds like I've worked some jobs that were rough, and that are like people who work these jobs are just surviving. Like they're kind of in this more almost like animalistic state. And then there's people who choose that their labor is going to be like more of a mental thing. And it seems like that's what that is a symbol of, almost, in a way.
What do you mean by
like,
that?
It sounds like identifying that the school environment and what it is, like exercising the tool of your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Is like identified as separate from just like the barbaric nature of surviving, like digging holes and stuff.
Oh, definitely. Oh, speaking of digging holes, a lot of people, when I say explain the job, they're like, that sounds like holes. And I'm like, yeah, it is, except for we don't really dig holes. We cut down trees, and we're not looking for our grandfather's buried treasure. But no, like that was the work projects were like a means to an end, in that I had so many kids like break down while they're digging up a stump, or they're trying to push a wheelbarrow. And like there's like this one, like they just break down and just start sharing stuff that you had no idea that they were dealing with. And like we had some like great breakthroughs, but there's also like some judicial breakthrough. Like one kid expressed his abuse by his dad's boyfriend or whatever, and he shared it with the group, and we were able to get that guy locked up.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
So you have those things, and like I mean, there was a time I broke down. Like, I forget what it was. There's one kid who I had a really good relationship with, and he was just being so selfish. And like, when I announced to them that I was leaving, like, he like made it about him, and I was crying. I'm like, dude, like I'm leaving. I don't want to leave you guys, but I have to, just for my personal life. And like, all you can think about is yourself. And like, it helped our relationship and being able to be honest with each other. And it was, and it plays into like a lot of like who I am and like my background growing up, and like all those kids are from different situations. All the staff are from different situations, backgrounds, age. Like, we had one guy who's like 50 years old working there. Another guy, he's like the toughest, like manliest man I've ever met in my life. And he like played in NFL Europe. Like, I thought he was like a Marine, like the way he's built and like how strong he was and stuff. Like, we have them, like a surfer guy from Texas. Like, I don't know. It's just like all these people come together, and we're just like being raw and real and working through like our emotions, and it doesn't matter where we're from or who we are.
Yeah.
And so it helped like further that mentality of like, you know, you can make connections and like relationships with anyone as long as you just take time to get to know like them and find one way to connect, and just like the power of relationships also, you know, like for me in high school, it's like those teachers, and then at that job, like connecting with the kids and building, like we emphasize relationships so much with the kids. And even now, like working in the middle school, like trying to be like an advocate for like each kid in the school, you know, it's like so important. But yeah, like I said, that was like my most favorite job, and I loved like doing manual labor anyway. So yeah, it was fun, like building everything. And another thing that we really tried to drill into the kids' mind was like taking pride in the things that you do. And so that's an issue we would also push on the kids. Like, hey, I saw you during like when we were trying to skin logs, and you were taking pride in what you were doing. Like, I'm gonna push you. Like, why? And so anyway, so yeah, like being able to take pride in everything you do is like a huge thing. Also, I took away from like whether it's pushing a wheelbarrow or going to grad school. You know,
I heard a great little analogy the other day of two laborers carrying rocks or whatever.
Yeah.
And like one person is asked, they're carrying rocks to this ground where they're building a cathedral or whatever. Mm-hmm. And one of the first guy's asked, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm carrying damn rocks.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stand it." And he like throws a rock down. And then the second guy is asked, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a cathedral." Just like the subtle difference of the attitude you have toward the goal that you're working toward.
I saw that analogy play out in real life, because you have kids who were new to the group and were still very self-centered and not group focused, and the kids who have been there for like 3-4 months, like they're excited to get a new sleeping tent, because one, we don't have to like double up in our other sleeping tents, and they're taking pride, and the other kids just like drop in like logs and just like not being careful, and he's not taking pride in it, and he doesn't understand the value or the importance of why we're doing this, you know. And the other kids will get onto them about it and call them out and call group meetings and be like, hey, like we want to make this nice. This is where we're going to live for the next 6 months. Like, I want it to be done now. So like, and it was super cool to see it all play out.
Man, I can really understand how empowering that would be. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, so what that type of what am I trying to say? In my experiences with super manual labor, has very positive experiences on the brain, the psyche. What did you already have like a history with this kind of labor stuff, or did you just fall into it and in this job?
No, I don't. Like all of my jobs I've ever. So one of the things this is a side note, I've always taken pride how I've always worked for local businesses and never have worked at fast food. No offense to people who work fast food. I know some great people and who actually enjoy it, but yeah, I've never done manual labor. I always liked, so like my school, we do a lot of service projects for people in high school, and so like I liked being able to help with that and stuff. But no, like I've always appreciated, like I said, like woodworking and like people who do those things. So like And that's another reason why I enjoyed it. Like it was fun, like being able to like, we worked with chisels. Everything we did was hand done. We like even drilling, we used a brace and bit, which is so you brace and you, yeah. The only modern technology that we use is that we wouldn't make our own dowels. The school would buy dowels for us to, when we would join things together, we would put dowels through them so they stay secure. But no, like it was fun being able to like experience those skills and learn those skills. And then like during COVID, like I worked construction and that was fun. But no, it's always been stuff I appreciated and like wanted to do. And if I have the opportunity, I'd love like building. And I also like when I was little in 6th grade, we had this random patch of woods that I'd go to at my friend's house, and we would build forts all the time. So I guess like I was always building and like doing stuff like that when I was little. But
I did construction during COVID too.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool.
What did you just do, like standard construction stuff?
So my wife, for some reason, she was like all over Facebook Marketplace and all the neighborhood groups, and she saw this one lady advertise like, "Hey, we need help clearing out our attic. I'll pay you $100." I was like, "Oh, that won't take like 2 hours. I'll do it." And then it didn't take 2 hours, so I ended up getting paid like, it took like 5 hours. So I mean, that's still like $20 an hour. It's not bad.
Yeah.
But the guy, he owned a construction business. He's like, "Hey, you're a good worker. You want to like?" And first, he invited me to like help. It was actually a house he was building, or renovating the whole thing. So he invited me back to help him build his house, which was cool. And he's Mexican. So another cool thing that I liked about it, I got to experience like a lot of Mexican culture. And cause like we would go, it was like on the Hispanic side of town, and like we'd go to like he'd like send me to like the Mexican grocery to like, he'd always feed me, which was cool. But he'd like have me pick up stuff, and we'd like grill after we were done building stuff, and then learned like some more Spanish, which was cool. And then he eventually asked me like, "Hey, like I need help on the job site. Like, are you doing anything?" I'm like, "No, not really." And so like I did like one job or a few jobs. I worked with him a few times at we were building a painting hangar for Honda Jet in Greensboro. So I was doing a lot of like framing, and I was also new, so I was also like the grunt who would like carry stuff and clean.
Yeah, I know that vibe. I know that vibe.
But it was fun. No, I loved it.
I did. Mine was a little more specialized. So I worked for this company that bought like antique cabins and then kind of rebuilt them.
Oh wow, that's
like
really
log
cool.
cabins or whatever. So yeah, it was good. I love log cabins and always kind of wanted to. I've had an idea in my head of like eventually it'd be cool to build my own. And then I just thought, I found this company. I was like, well, maybe I could like work for this company and learn how to build cabins while I'm at it, and that could be fun. And I did it for like, I think I was with them for like 8 months or something.
Did you learn a lot?
I did learn a lot, and it was cool. I got a lot of cool skills, just like know-how, like framing, like understanding like not blueprints really, but understanding sort of at what level people like plan a house out and all the little steps that like. It's a really cool. Like I guess it can be a really good teaching experience in the importance of every single task along the way. You
Definitely,
know? Like when you're pouring foundation, when you're like laying foundation, that's as important as once you get up to the roof or whatever. Like all of it matters. So and ours was such a small operation. It was usually a crew of 3, including me, and so it was like the lead guy. A Hispanic guy that was kind of like the lead on the ground guy, and then there was me who was kind of like pulling, like doing all the inconvenient stuff, and being asked to take all the whatever, and I was usually screwing stuff up and like getting hurt or whatever. But yeah, super cool learning experience, and especially during COVID, like for me, it was a cool experience. I learned that despite what I thought, I learned that I could bear like 102-degree days in the sun, and I could also bear like 21-degree days in the winter, like outdoors. I could bear any of that if I was smart about how I planned it out or whatever.
That's a big lesson I learned in the woods. I feel like I'm already a pretty, like I said, optimistic like person, and I don't mind discomfort, but I learned to really like not let discomfort get in the way of my living situation. Because
It's a
like
real thing.
we wouldn't sleep in the lodge. The only times we'd sleep in the lodge is when it was in single digit degree, or maybe less than 5. So we were sleeping outside in sleeping bags all year round. And we had wood stoves, but we only lit them in the mornings. And it was only staff's job to light them. I would always light them for the kids because I was nice. But my partner, he would never light them. So the kids would always get mad when I was away. They're like, Mr. Beisch didn't light the stoves in the morning like you do. I'm like, oh, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I've really like high, like, but not, I guess, discomfort tolerance now. So I don't mind. Because, I mean, if I can still move my extremities, I can still breathe, I'm fine.
That's, I mean, that's a life skill, man.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Discomfort needs to be handled. If you can keep your cool through discomfort, it seems like that's like a life-changing skill to have, probably. Yeah. Another thing I was listening to was a cool little tidbit I heard about Elon Musk recently was that he challenged himself at one point to figure out how little he could live off of or whatever. He was like, I want to see if I can live off of $1 a day or less in terms of food or whatever. Yeah. So he just like for like a month or something could live off of $1 or less, and most of the time was eating like ramen noodles or something. But yeah, he apparently for him, when he discovered that his survival was guaranteed, so to speak, like he knew that his life wasn't at risk based on food. That apparently was a big shift for him in terms of like how he thought about his whole career or whatever. He realized how liberated he was from that, which I think is similar to this idea of discomfort. It's like there's certain things that once you get rid of them as a threat, like the idea of discomfort as a threat. Yeah. If you can just conquer that, then like definitely. All of a sudden the door in life gets wider. Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And it helps your mindset too. Like if I can get by and like I don't need to complain, it's just like a waste of brain power. Yeah. Waste of time. Like if I can make it till tomorrow and X, Y, or Z is bothering me, and I know that it's like temporary, like I'll be fine. One of the things that helps me, even in school and even right now, but I learned this in college, is like stressing over like papers and stuff. I'm like, oh, I hate this right now. This is the worst, and like not being stuck in that mindset. I always like imagine like something I knew I had planned like the next day after like a big assignment or something, and like imagining myself in that moment. So I was trying to explain this to the girl that helps me. I'm like, I came up with a new analogy. I'm like, okay, think of like, because I'm scared of roller coasters and heights. I'll go on them, but like I still like cry before I go on them. But like I always look at the people coming off the roller coaster. I'm like, they're alive. None of them like have a heart attack. Like that's gonna be me in like 2 minutes. So, I mean, still freaked out, but I'm like thinking of that in my head. I'm like, okay, or like 30 minutes from now, I'm gonna be waiting in line to go pee in the bathroom. Like, this isn't as bad as I think it's gonna be. Yeah. I'm not gonna die on this roller unless a freak accident happens, but I'll be fine. Like 30 minutes or in an hour, we're gonna be driving home, and I'm gonna be in my bed later. Yeah. So that's my mindset when it comes to like discomfort and things, like whether it be like initial or like something that I have to endure for a while. I'm like, think about something that will for sure happen when you're not in discomfort, Yeah. So. Yeah, that's a cool practice. Yeah. I don't know what mine is. I think it's like, it's more it's not, I can't remove myself from it in that way. It's probably more like, the direction of like, you're being a little whatever. Yeah. Like, Well, honestly, I think I used it, looking back now, I used it at the boarding school, because like I'd come back to work on Sunday and I'm like, I don't want to be here. And then I'll think of myself, okay, during cookout, I'll be in an issue with kid and I'll be enjoying it. And then that happened. Or like Friday or next weekend, I have this going on. And I'll just like imagine that happening. And by the time I know it, it's Friday and I get to leave. So yeah, it helps make time go by faster for sure. Man, speaking of time going by faster, I guess I got to let you go soon. Before we wrap it up, I'll ask you like what is on the horizon for you, like what you got coming up. Next Sunday, October 16th is a Sunday, right? I want to see. because I also want to see when this will come up. It'll come out. Damn, this will come out the 17th, so
Oh,
it'll be
no
like
worries.
the day after.
It's not a big
I'll
deal.
try to post about it anyway.
Don't worry about it. So yeah, yesterday we'll be at Fancy Groceries for their fall market. I'll be introducing the pumpkin spice lumpias.
I'm gonna try to be there for that.
Yeah, you should. I think it's 2 to 6, something like that. But yeah, we'll be there. I have my phone on me. The following weekend, the 22nd, will be on. That's a Saturday. We'll be at the City Bev. I think they do it like seasonally. Clearance sale. I don't know if you've been to City Bev or not. If you like drinking, they have a lot of like craft beers on sale. Like people line up like an hour before. It's like Black Friday for beer.
Is that next door to Fancy Grocery? Is that next door to the barbershop?
No, that's Stella Brew.
The Stella, that's right.
City Bev. Apparently, it's like the oldest like place that sells alcohol in Winston or something like that.
Huh.
Yeah, the owner Spencer. He's really cool. He's a good guy to know. But we'll be selling food there from like 8 to like noon, and then the following day there's like the Filipino event. There's like a Filipino band artist guy person playing at some bar in Clemens we've never been to. It's like called Clemens Sports Bar or something. I don't know. I've never been there.
Nice.
I think that's all the events. Oh, and then the next Friday we'll be at the elementary school I used to teach at, Union Cross Elementary, doing their fall festival. So
Very cool.
I'm excited to see old students and old coworkers there. That should be fun. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's all, at least in October. We have some things in November, but I'm not thinking about those at all, or don't remember them.
That's a lot of opportunities, though.
Yeah, yeah. Last month I kind of took a break, just like get adjusted with school and coaching and stuff. But and it was like I had 2 events last month. It wasn't like a break, but
Yeah.
That's what we got going on.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, man, I really enjoyed hearing more about like your whole deal and
Yeah.
your experience and everything.
Sorry if I talk too much or
Nah,
went on
man.
a bunch of tangents. But
That's what you're here for. I was stoked to hear it all.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I guess that's it. I guess we'll wrap it up. But
all right.
I'll see you at Fancy Groceries probably before too long.
Yeah.
So.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.